Hello and welcome to the Earth Imagery at Work MOOC. I'm your host Kevin Butler and I'll be with you throughout the course. When I started remote sensing and imagery at the graduate level, I didn't know anything about what types of sensors exist or what's high resolution imagery versus low resolution imagery, or how band combinations and vegetation indices even work. And I'm sure that some of you are in the same boat now. But as I learned how all of this stuff works, it became incredibly obvious to me just how many applications there are for using imagery. I'm sure many of you are taking this course because you have a similar curiosity about what imagery and ESRI can do. Our goal is to show you how Earth imagery helps people do their work in a variety of industries. And I'm excited to get started on this class because I'm proud of what we've been able to accomplish on the imagery team and the MOOC's development team. Now, the stuff that you're going to see here is cutting edge. We've set the bar high for content. There's a mix of guided and open-ended exercises, and even the guided ones you may find challenging. This is by design. We didn't want to design another course that simply tells you which buttons to click. This imagery is complex, and you can even make the argument that working with it is part science and part art form. So we wanted to develop the course in a way that would bring about dynamic, lively conversations. We want to hear from you. So if you have questions, post them in the Q&A tab here. And if you have answers to your fellow students' questions, please share those too. We know that some of you have a lot of experience with imagery and GIS. And I hope that by the end of this course, you'll have learned as much from each other as you have from us. Here's what you're going to get out of this course. You'll gain access to the vast collection of imagery and web apps that ESRI hosts. You'll get to test drive the latest and greatest software tools from our imagery development team. We're talking about software that was released only a few months ago. For you imagery specialists out there, I think you'll be surprised by how well imagery and GIS can be integrated. And for those of you who are new to imagery or even new to GIS, you'll be surprised by how much you learn from each other. Now, what you're not going to get is another remote sensing course. There's plenty of those out there, existing websites and courses that talk about the history and the theory and the techniques of remote sensing. Think of this as a companion course that really focuses on solutions for key industries. For example, in agriculture, we're going to develop what are known in the industry as yield management zones. We'll look at real data that shows the yields from previous years, and then we'll tie that to vegetation measured from aerial imagery, terrain characteristics, and soils data. Obviously, it would be great to create a model that can predict next year's harvest, but we can't actually do that. I mean, think about how often the weather report is wrong if you look more than a week ahead. But what we can use these zones for is to give farmers some guidance on how to respond to weather. So if there's a drought and water is limited, which areas do they want to focus their resources on? It's the parts of the fields that have traditionally produced more. And we can do this kind of analysis pretty well with imagery. We'll also look at environmental modeling. We'll use a vast collection of imagery from a satellite called Landsat to go back in time and watch the development of one of mankind's greatest impacts on the Earth. It's a really cool exercise that'll give you a good idea about how you can put satellite imagery to work for environmental monitoring. We'll also look at burn scar mapping in Australia. We'll use that same data set to map where fires have occurred and how the vegetation has regenerated over time. Then we'll go into the rapid response world of disaster relief. Here, time and information are everything. We're trying to get imagery out to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. So we'll take a look at the data that ESRI used in response to the earthquakes in Nepal. After that, we'll learn how electric utilities use imagery to keep an eye on the millions of miles of transmission lines and towers that they have to maintain. In this industry, power outages can cost millions of dollars. Utilities do everything they can to minimize these costs. So finding trees that are encroaching on power lines and trimming them back before they become a problem saves them money and keeps their customers happy. With imagery, not only can they identify these problem areas, they can automate much of this workflow, and we'll show you how to do that. Finally, we'll end with insurance in the commercial sectors. We'll look at imagery that was collected before and after a major tornado in Joplin, Missouri. We'll count the number of homes that were damaged, make assessments, and quantify the number of square feet, value, and number of people that were affected by this tornado. Finally, we end on a creative note. The last exercise is completely open-ended. We want you to use imagery to tell us a story about where you live, somewhere you've been, or a part of the world that has always fascinated you. It's a chance to geek out as geographers and see what happens when you fuse high-resolution imagery with some of the most fascinating GIS layers that ESRI can provide. I hope you're excited. This is a really cool set of courses that we've put together. And to help you have the best possible experience, we have a team of support people ready. You can always reach us in the Q&A tab, or you can email us at our help desk at gistraining@esri.com. After this section, you're not going to see a bunch of lectures. I'm going to be interviewing experts that work at ESRI, that work with the various industries that this course covers. And for the first week that those sections go live, you'll be able to ask them questions directly as well. All right, that's enough for me. Let's get to work.